Good morning, everyone. Wow, what an exciting morning we've had already. So we started off this morning hearing from Bob, and I could not have been more pleased by the first slide that Bob put up on the screen, which was about some research, some fact-based insights, some data that basically said having aligned commercial teams with common goals is going to result in at least 5% more revenue for properties who are successful. And I don't think there's a single person in this room, when they look forward to the 2023 challenges ahead of us, couldn't do with that extra 5%. So in the panel this morning, I'm so excited to introduce some of our panel members onto this panel this morning and have a great discussion around that alignment of bringing together all of those disciplines from sales, marketing, communications, digital, revenue management, pricing. It is like a buffet of skills that are needed, and pulling all of those skills to get together is certainly the job for an expert conductor of an orchestra. So without further ado, I'm going to start off with the panel. So the first guest to the panel this morning is Jamie Simpson. Jamie is the general manager of a hotel that's very close to my heart, Jumeirah Mina Salam, and she joins us with over 25 years of luxury hospitality experience across quite a number of different regions: South Asia, Southeast Asia, Australasia, and the Middle East. Very highly commercial, with a proven track record of building and leading high-performance teams. Recently awarded General Manager of the Year, and also named in the Power List. Thank you, Jamie. Have a seat. Jamie is joined by the esteemed Amanda Elder. Amanda is the Chief Commercial Officer at Kempinski Hotels, responsible for driving commercial strategy for Kempinski globally. She oversees teams of experts in sales, marketing, digital, distribution, PR, CRM, and loyalty. Did I forget anything? With more than 25 years of global sales and marketing experience, having also held leadership positions with Fairmont Raffles, Marriott, Starwood. And Amanda also reminded me this morning that she once was a general manager. So moving from operations leadership to commercial sales leadership. Welcome to the panel this morning, Amanda. Next up on my power panel, we have Craig Donaldson, Director of the RMCC. I'll ask you to explain what that is in a second, Craig, for Middle East, Africa, and Turkey for Hilton. Craig's progressively grown his career with Hilton over the last 12 years and leads a team of 42 revenue management professionals supporting the Hilton hotels across the region. His team partner with both commercial operations to deliver commercial performance through revenue management, expertise, and experience. Welcome to the panel, Craig. And I still have a chair. So also joining me on the panel is David Garner, Vice President of Commercial for Minor Hotels, Middle East and Africa. David is another 25-year hospitality veteran, having worked for hotel groups, tourist boards, and even an airline. David has been in the Middle East for 19 years and with Minor since 2011, where he oversees all commercial functions in the region. So please help me with a round of applause for the full panel this morning. Move this away. Oh. I write on both sides of my page. I was thinking, Bassem, I'm sorry. Bassem is head of global sales and business development for Caesars Palace in Dubai. I feel like I have to give you a bow now. Let's improvise. Bassem is no stranger to the region and the UAE and has worked in a number of roles and brands here since 2007. Roles spanning sales, marketing, also operations for a time, also some general management for a time as well as commercial. And in his current role, Bassem is tasked to accelerate global market growth for Caesars Palace. Special welcome to Bassem. Thank you. So, our asset management group before us were talking about what they want. and that's all about profitability. And to deliver great profitability, we're talking about this alignment. And so one of the first topics we want to talk about is that kind of team structure. How are the teams coming together? What's needed today, and what potentially could change in the future? I want to just ask that question, first of all, to David.
Yeah, hi. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Can you hear me? Okay, great. From our side, we see that the commercial role has extensively changed, particularly over the last 5 years. It started off, obviously, from the chief commercial officer roles down, and we've seen that this has cascaded down the line much more into a regional level, area level, etc. What we're seeing at the moment, though, is this hasn't cascaded down to cluster property level yet. We see the commercial area as an important function because it brings, as the panel before talked about, the individual silos together under one. And we do see and we do believe that we need that commercial oversight to ensure that the strategy and direction is correct for the, in particular, specialist areas, which will remain specialist areas, but they're integrated much more into one function for us. And I think in the last 3 years, you've seen this change even more as we look the way we manage our business through the digital side, through the social media management. So there's been a whole shift in the way that we've done business and that we've managed it. And the commercial side is what is driving this. And this is very much integrated from corporate head office, regional offices, and then cascaded down to individual properties. And then we obviously are discussing that often with ownership on and individual owners on how we implement that at their level.
It's a great point. So how do you see this, Amanda, particularly this piece around what is to come? What do you see as the key change that could still happen ahead of us?
I mean, I had to laugh as we all came up on stage. It was all this 25 years of experience, and I think all of us on stage have really seen so many changes. I remember when I first started, I was always a salesperson. I'm sort of surrounded more by revenue-hearted people, perhaps, but it was very much personality and the champagne and the entertaining, and that was a great leader for commercial. And now, as these years have gone on, I mean, it's so much about technology, data. It's about understanding where the business is coming from and how you're going to reach those people. And I was really reflecting on one of the people that spoke this morning when they said, technology is wonderful, but luxury, any company can be luxury, but are they going to maintain this human connection? So to me, the way we are structuring things is to try to find that balance of somebody who has the leadership skills, the personality, but has this data approach. And if one person simply can't roll it all up, then those commercial leaders within that team have to obviously all bring something different to the table. And I know we're going to talk a little more about structure moving down into hotels separately, but I see it at corporate and regional level. I don't see it at hotel level just yet.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point, is that when we come to the top of the organization, it's perhaps been a little bit easier to start creating those alignments and synergies. If we think about your role, my role, even David, in a regional structure, similar thing with commercial responsibility, but not yet in the hotels. And Jamie, sitting as a general manager of a hotel, why do you think that is? Why do you think that we're sort of getting closer at the corporate level, but not delivering when we see it at the hotels?
I think it's the main question. And to what Amanda said, 20 years ago, we're in a hotel with a director of sales and marketing. I think it was more sales, maybe less marketing. And as technology has moved, so has the need for understanding. And when I look at it now going, digital's changed, the way we get information's changed, and we need to make decisions. Fast decisions, quick decisions, strategic decisions. And within a hotel unit as a standalone, I just don't have the resources or the expertise. So when you have cluster coming into it, you have more reach. And when you have those additional resources, they may be more expensive, but the payoff is a lot more. And I think that's where I see things changing, but not fast enough in standalone hotel units, I'll be honest. If I didn't have the support of the cluster role and corporate, I wouldn't be able to do what I do today and deliver the results I need to.
And you mentioned there about the ability to have that breadth of skills that sometimes can be facilitated by a cluster. Talking about skills gaps now. So, what do we see as being the the most critical gaps in different team members? And also, what should everyone in this room be really thinking about putting on their professional development plan for next year? If they could invest in one thing or two things, what would that be? Amanda, do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I remember the days when it was pleading with owners to allow budgeting for a revenue manager, right? And now it's already for 5 years been digital. But where does offline sit with online? I mean, do you budget for both? Do you lean, obviously far more digital? How do you work branding into that? I mean, I come more from the corporate perspective. Our head office is Geneva, and we have to think regionally, because I think it's a very different answer as you move towards the different regions. So it's very, very difficult to know how to resource and staff and find the skill set and budget and have the money and the people there with, that we need to cover the breadth of what's, required.
So,
Alex, if you don't mind me saying, I think we've also got, we need to take into consideration how your property is managed. Is it managed, owned, leased, franchised, depending on where you are in the world? Here we're dominated by management contracts primarily with some franchise. And individual owners have individual expectations on wanting their own team, their own focus, and they don't necessarily see the benefits of clustering, shared service models, etc., which we believe for certain commercial roles in particular, especially the e-commerce and digital side, can be very much centralized.
great point, but I'm going to push my panel here. I was really hoping that we were going to give you that one development area. So let's just double down on these skills. What do we think are some of the gaps, and what can the team in the room here, the audience in the room, really be thinking about as something to work on?
I mean, just one thing I'll say before I hand over to the gentleman. I think that we don't analyse the information we have.
Analysis.
So, when do we actually use this data that we keep collecting? And then do we use that to make the decisions towards the strategy? So to me, there's the skill set gap, if you like, in a nutshell.
Yeah.
I think a big part of it as well is having the time and the ability to analyze that. I'm extremely fortunate to lead a team that has, within a very specialized function of revenue management, specialized teams. So my revenue managers aren't putting the documents together. They aren't building the tools from scratch. We have specialist analysts that are able to do that, which gives the commercial leaders, gives the sales team a lot more time to spend with a guest, spend with a client, have those commercial discussions, helps empower the general managers to make those decisions. Whereas I think when you're on your own, so to speak, you have to do a lot of that building of the data, which takes away the time to analyze and make strategic decisions off that data.
Yeah, great point. Bassam, any thoughts on skills?
I think, it's especially for the sales team, they need to be more analytical, to have this commercial mindset, approaching the right business at the right time, rather than just turning up and having coffee with a client. So, and this is partnership between revenue and sales, I see it. Revenue would bring in the data, and the sales would execute and approach the clients in the right ways. Also, it goes both ways. So for sales, you need to get the market intel and deliver it to the revenue team. So it's partnership. It goes both ways.
And I think that relationship is probably the most critical thing about not being on property. We cannot help to make those decisions without having that insight and that feedback from the sales team that are there, especially when it's one thing being in Dubai and speaking to a team in Dubai. It's another thing in Nigeria, in Istanbul, in the Seychelles, all over the continent. We need as much of that information as possible to support with the right insights and data.
So definitely analytics has come up as a theme there, but why don't we turn it around the other way? We've got these great revenue leaders or business intelligence experts who have got data. What skills do they need to come to the table and be more powerful?
Communication, I'd say.
Communication.
Personality, communication.
No, absolutely. I think generally the revenue manager is normally the quieter person around the table, unless it's pulled out of them. So they need to learn a lot from the sales guys, the commercial leaders, to know when it's their turn to really step up and say, this is what the data is saying and this is how it needs to guide our decisions. So I think that communication, planning, of course, is extremely important, especially when you're doing multiple analytics at the same time and having to be in part of these commercial discussions. But I think communication goes a long way.
I've just got to jump in there and say, we talk about beautiful performance, and we liken it to a symphony orchestra, which you touched on earlier, Alex, where every instrument has its place, and the little triangle that's just at the right moment and makes its point is just as valuable as the trombone that's far louder. So we talk about this a lot, and I really see what you're saying there.
Yeah, I also think that we get asked more and more in our selection process of general managers, what is their commercial knowledge, their commercial sense. We do various tests to ensure that they have the broad spectrum of actually knowledge, especially for the mid-market brands where service levels obviously differ from the actual luxury brands. And we have much more single-minded, commercial-focused people who are obviously looking at a mixture of revenue, cost management, and then obviously a higher GOP margin. So we're very aware of that. And I think there's a lot of development and skill training gap missing. Because it's not a natural transition. Just because you're a director of sales and marketing, it doesn't mean that you're suddenly a commercial leader. Because I think especially the e-commerce and distribution field is such a minefield of information and opportunities that you really have to have cross-exposure and knowledge of that to really understand a broad commercial area.
Yeah, certainly when in a lot of cases we have an amazingly strong director of sales who then gets pushed up the career journey into a director of sales and marketing and haven't necessarily had the coaching and the development to cover all of those different disciplines. Just talking about specialist skills then for a second. So we're seeing a greater emphasis in the industry on centralized services, cluster services, and it's certainly an area of the business that can be controversial, particularly when you're dealing with multiple ownership groups, different brands, different geographies, almost as you mentioned, Craig. I'm going to come to you on this question. What do you really see as the benefits? If you had to do a sales pitch to an owner or an asset manager, why should brands be considering shared services? And also, why should someone consider a career within a shared services environment?
I think the biggest benefit is having that team that collaborates together. Like I said, we've got multiple different layers within the team, but just having that intelligence working together, the problem solving, the ability to take learnings from different markets and apply them in different areas while still being able to support multiple brands, franchise and manage different ownership structures. I think a great example is how we saw or continue to see the evolution out of the pandemic. We were extremely fortunate in Dubai to see things open up a lot quicker than other markets. So the ability to collaborate together and say what worked and what didn't work in the markets that opened up earlier, what can we apply to do better in other markets? I think equally, we've all got massive pipeline of hotels, especially in this part of the world. Having that centralized service, being able to plug in from pre-opening allows us to open our hotels quicker and ramp up much quicker. And I don't think there's an owner in the world that wouldn't want to be able to have the hotel trading sooner and delivering more market share.
So Jamie is...
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to jump in on that because I find it's absolutely true. I fully believe that. And then I come from a slightly different point of view where a lot of owners are now saying, I don't like that I don't have as much attention. I'm one of 20 hotels in a market. I want to have the full and utter focus of a smaller brand. And, so this whole clustering has to be. We simply don't have specialization otherwise. But equally, how do we make sure owners and GMs, for that matter, feel they're getting the attention they need and deserve?
I think you have the opportunity to pick and choose which areas of shared service models that you actually encourage owners to buy into. Because frontline sales, we may say it's better actually to have a dedicated sales approach for that hotel because of the type of property it is. But then on the back end with the revenue management, the distribution, e-commerce, some marketing elements, you can have shared service models that actually work. So you have a hybrid model there.
Yeah, great point. So I'm going to come to Jamie with the next question, and because the role of the general manager has to be, critical in this in terms of drawing together potentially a partial on-property team, a partial shared services or cluster team. But guest insights, Jamie, are also an important part of this, because if we're going to go on this journey for more total revenue optimization, total profit optimization, understanding the guest insights has to be an important part of that. So where do you see the role of the general manager in this, and what are you perhaps doing to get ahead of the curve in this space?
It's a good question. And I mean, GMs now have to be commercially savvy. There's too much information and there's a lot of specialty, and we need to be able to draw on what the data is actually telling us. And that comes through people, so that communication is key. But what it comes back to for me is it's the guest. If I have a happy guest, I have top-line revenue. And that doesn't just mean what the market's telling us or the channel to book or what package is going. It's more about than just selling a hotel room now. It's about selling an experience. And we're finding that more and more with, after COVID, with people's travels patterns. They want an end-to-end experience. And that doesn't just take into just commercials. You have to take your whole leadership team and make sure they're all savvy and that we're adapting to the change. It's not just technology, it's also a way of thinking. And if you're not ahead of the curve and you're not working with your team to be ahead, then you're not going to have that guest satisfaction score, you're not going to have the guest return. So everything you're doing commercially to attract them isn't going to take you anywhere. So it's a big circle, but for me, it's always about the guest experience.
Yeah, and it's wonderful to hear, because one of the things we hear about in the industry a lot is, the power of the big travel brands, the OTAs, the distributors, the intermediaries, etc., and how much data and sophistication they have. But one thing they don't have is that guest experience piece, and being able to really drive a positive guest stay, total revenue capture, share of wallet, etc., and understand those behaviors, because ultimately the behaviors on property in a hotel are so critical to understanding how you can target more of those customers and more of their spend. Now, Bassem, we've spoken about stakeholders, we've talked about people. Systems and processes also have to be part of this as well, and it would be very natural to go to sort of the revenue management team and start talking about technology and systems and this kind of stuff, but I'm really interested to hear your thoughts from a sales perspective. Where can you use systems and technology more effectively to build a more powerful and a more successful sales force?
Yeah, I think it goes back again to have this strategic approach towards our business today, and the revenue team would supply us with the data, and also you have to keep record on these systems of what actions, what activities. So you build your entire action plan on these systems, so there is consistency, there are deadlines that are there, and it's very structured approach and strategic.
So structured and strategic. Who's your partner in this? You typically want your sales force to be customer facing, being out in the field, not necessarily in the back office so much. So who do you look to partner with to be able to support that infrastructure?
Ideally, our partners, the revenue teams, and also marketing, because marketing can come with a lot of analysis and a lot of insight about what's going on in the market itself. So it's, again, working together as a team, having this holistic approach towards business plans and targeting the right markets, targeting the key source markets in the right way, full force.
I'm going to come to Jamie on this as well, because as a general manager, I'm sure you could be bombarded with lots of data and information, and I'm sure actually as a general manager you could spend your entire day quite beautifully behind your desk looking at systems and reports and things, but that's not all about your job, is it? So what's your techniques in terms of being able to maximize data the most in the least amount of time? Do you have any tips and tricks that you want to share with the audience?
It's like we've been mentioning in the pre-chats about this panel, the days of the revenue management meeting have evolved. And now there are so many stakeholders. You have finance directors, you also have your commercial leaders, whether they're sales, whether they're marketing, whether they're digital. And it's about them giving me the information, but it's me being able to articulate what the point is. And it's also being able to challenge the different stakeholders to make sure we're bringing it back to strategy. And one thing I think of when I think of technology that I think have done it the best, although it's terribly cumbersome now to get out of, is Apple and iCloud. It's like once you're hooked up and once they introduce that, all your devices are linked, everything's convenient, and it's extremely hard to leave. I look at it also where I am from Australia, if you can tell from my accent, so my original Apple account is in Australia, so it's quite difficult to keep that up with PayPal and all these new technologies that come on now that I'm a resident in the Middle East. And I watch and I see how that evolves. And I use this when I look at the team, where you have different levels of colleagues. You have the new colleagues coming through that are trained in all this digital and social, but they have less experience on the relationship management. And neither one or the other is better, in my opinion. The data from the systems is going to give you a snapshot, and it's going to give you historical trends. But it's actually challenging the people and the team and asking the questions. And like Amanda said, it's an orchestra. We've got to hear all the voices, and that's how I can make my best decisions in that environment.
Alex, just leading on from that, I think we've got an issue at the moment across multiple areas is we have so much data available through business intelligence, oversights, OT insights, revenue management, forecasting, analysing every single area from A to Z. But we still have an issue because you have departmental leaders who may not understand the data that impact the F&B versus the spa, the activities, the sales room side of it. And I think it's more training that's actually needed, but it's also how the properties then manage their own commercial revenue meetings. Because the historic weekly one where you run through things, you make a decision, and that's what you roll with for the week, has actually been and gone. They're still an important function, but you actually are analysing the data on such a more regular basis. Could be hourly, and you're making decisions on managing rates, automatic bar rate mechanisms, or whatever you're actually looking at to maximise your actual revenue. But we have a gap in some of the departmental areas who don't necessarily understand that information well enough to take the decision of, well, should we be taking that British guest over the German guests, over the Russian guests, over the ex-guests? Because actually their rate might be different, but their overall spend is much higher. So are we actually looking at the total revenue of each guest rather than just the traditional RevPAR approach? And that's where we're moving much more into.
And that sort of talks a little bit to not only within commercial, the silos, but right across the entire operational business. And I think to have a high-performing team, that's a key factor. Bassem, what do you see as some of the challenges to these silos, and how could teams perhaps step back before they go into 2023 and think about how they could work together more synergistically within the property or the region?
I think, first of all, we have to highlight how dangerous is to work in silos and how this could be paralyzing the performance of the commercial team. So, and it's up to the commercial leader, commercial director, who can really take charge and take full responsibility of bringing the team together. The team has to have like one tone of voice, one message out there, and one goal. Without this, I don't think any achievement is possible. And if it's happening, it's probably because of the high demand in the city, but to be a winning team, you have to work all together. So alignment between each commercial function is crucial. And also, don't underestimate simple things like project groups, team building activities. Back to basics as well helps from time to time.
And Alex, I just jump in and say, to me, COVID taught us that culture is so important. And I mean company culture, while also celebrating that there are different regions that have these nuances, for sure. But this one journey without the silos, understanding that we need to hear all voices. And something that I love to tell people any chance I get is that we realised we could learn so much from every region, even though they do business very differently. And so, we will now continue that across our company and ensure that we're basically kneading it or knitting it all together to create that strong company culture.
It's a great point. And Craig, your teams aren't always physically in proximity to the rest of your commercial colleagues in the hotel. So what techniques are you using to kind of cut through that silo challenge?
I think it's a bit like what David was saying earlier. It's about speaking the same language, or at least understanding each other's language. If we're all speaking different languages, no one's going to have a common understanding of the objective. So we're very good at using acronyms. I think across all disciplines.
What is RMCC again?
Yeah, exactly. So how do do we present the data and give our colleagues the understanding, but equally make sure that we have the understanding from them, whether it's talking about marketing insights, talking about e-commerce, trying to get a handle on rate parity. There's so many different pieces that need to be put together, but in a common language. So again, I'd come back to helping the teams to better communicate and helping the property teams better understand, and only we can help them to better understand.
Excellent point. So let's come back to talent now. So we've all talked about the challenge of retaining and attracting talent, particularly through the COVID journey. But we've also talked about the fact we need to look for new skills, new thinking, and that requires us to potentially look outside of our industry, which can be a challenge in itself. So who'd like to maybe just get us started around what are those things that you're looking for now when you're recruiting, and any tips or trips or advice around how do we go and actually really pull people from other industries?
I mean, I can just jump in and say I thought it was amazing that two very notable luxury hotel groups both chose chief commercials from outside the hotel industry. And let's, watch that, track that, and let's see where those companies are at in 2-3 years' time. But I think we all have to keep evolving, or we'll have to see who else goes down the track of the M and the FS.
Yeah.
One of the things also that, for sales, for example, you have to look at the personality. Is this person is able to build relationships with the client, can present the hotel or the resort in the right ways. And back to the commercial director as well, I think it's a leadership. As Amanda said, it's not coming from certain career path or necessarily even from hospitality. It's more about the personality. Does this person have the right character to drive the team and to deliver the commercial strategies in the right shape and form?
I agree.
I think what's equally important is we develop our own talent from within. We're doing RMCC, or a consolidated revenue management center, took out a natural career progression from property. You started in reservations or on front desk, and then you worked your way through in the commercial. You maybe did sales or groups, conference and events, and then you'd go into a revenue management role. With the revenue management no longer being on property, that jump to commercial leader, it becomes a lot bigger. So what we're trying to do to really motivate our teams and retain talent is bring people from property, give them experience within the RMCC, which gives them the ability to look at multiple markets, deal with different commercial leaders, different general managers, but at the same time use learning and development programs that we have available to us and property resources that we're really fortunate to have, like great commercial leaders on property and general managers, to get them to be the next commercial leaders. We've had great success stories this year alone of revenue managers going into commercial manager roles, which super proud of, because like we were saying, it comes from different functions, but they also, the general managers need to give them a chance and take a chance, and the corporate leaders give them a chance and take a chance on them, but they can be amazing commercial leaders.
And I mean, I think an organisation such as this plays such an enormous role, because we mix, we mingle, we cohabitate, we decide that we can have, take that chance. Yeah. And, I think these conferences are so critical to expand people's horizons.
Absolutely. Jamie, what are you looking for? Talent, and how are you hooking people in that aren't in a hotel career right now?
Actually, that's why I look outside, to be honest, because inside the structure that I have, it's very hierarchical and very old school. So I don't believe anyone has the right structure yet, honestly speaking. I think it comes down to understanding the corporate, and that's where it's really important. And once the commercial leadership is in the corporate team, then it flows through. And when you start to see those changes happen, you need to also change your P&L, and you need to change what your expense structure looks like for technology versus headcount versus specialty. We need more people in commercial. We need to spend more in commercial, but we don't have the luxury of being able to have specialist resources all within the one structure. So I think while we're evolving and we're learning this, I ultimately believe anyone working in hospitality, we're still here for a guest journey. and we are very sociable people, and we are enigmatic, and we are connective. And I do believe if we're still looking for those core skills with these specialties, we're going to be able to move forward. And we'll be able to move forward at a pace that keeps us ahead as well. And I'm hoping that more of the individuals, I'm not looking just on reliance in the sales and marketing or commercial. I need my executive committee to be commercially savvy. Actually, it's no point to have a team telling me what to do and agreeing with them if I don't have a leadership team that embraces that. And I think you touched on it before, saying, where are the guests coming from? And are we pushing into these revenue management ideas, which we've got down pat in rooms now, and channel management, and we all look at SDR and we're all looking at that number, but where does it flow for F&B and our other operating departments? Because that's also hugely important to the overall performance of the property.
It's a great point. It gets me perfectly to my final question, Jamie. Thank you very much. So in our preparation for the panel, we all more or less concurred that we are definitely going further down that road of total hotel revenue management, total hotel thinking, but none of us really truly are where we'd like to be in terms of that profitability view in our commercial discussion. So I'm going to ask each of my panel members now, just sort of 1 minute each, what's next? What do you... I'll go to Bassam first. We'll work back along the panel. What's next? What's the one thing that you're going to be thinking about with the rest of your commercial team next year on that journey towards a profitability mindset?
I think, again, as everybody mentioned, that COVID taught us a lot of tough lessons. So something that the commercial team must look at is the cost of sale. So Jamie mentioned, happy guest, for example, and this is where you create repeat guests. This is, I would call it, the cheapest way of getting the right business through the door. So definitely cost of sale. How much is this business costing you to get it through the door? So I would focus on that.
Right, thanks, Bassam. Craig?
I think it's how we talk and what we talk about every day. Like Jamie said again, we're so good at talking about market share. We live and breathe it, but from a room's point of view, we need to talk about GOPAR, we need to talk about profitability. I like the saying earlier this morning, big ship, small rudder, but we need to start somewhere. We need to have it on the agenda. We need everyone talking about it in the same way that you wake up in the morning and you look at what was the market share from last night. We need to equally understand, are we driving profitability, and does the entire team understand what that means?
In addition to what the gentlemen have said, I would like to say we're going to really work far more about pay for performance, linking this change in behaviour that we need to see, and that cascading right through all of the commercial entities or the commercial arms of the business, and paying for that change of behaviour. And we believe that will really drive different outcomes. So that's going to be a big project for us.
Yeah, I think going into next year, expectations are very high from a budget point of view, and I think there's a realism now on what is happening next year and the impacts from the economic situation on a global basis. And whilst we're remaining positive, I think we have to look at, from a commercial side, our efficiencies, whether or not we can do clustering more, whether we can do shared services more, or whether or not the single property approach is better for certain properties and actual projects. For us, I think we have to look at the data much more analytically and then take decisions earlier on the way we're going to change our model and actually change the actual market trends. So, and I think the last point is the skills gap. We have to drive through our training from the commercial side and broaden the experience at a more middle management level.
Yes, David. Jamie, anything you want to add?
For me, it's still a guest has to be the centre of everything here. They're changing their behaviours, we have to change ours. And it's not just about channel management now too, it really is about understanding what they want and understanding how we need to adapt to what they need. And if we can be open and we can change the way we've done business in the past, then we're going to go into a much savvier future, and we'll have much happier owners, and we'll have much better flow through, and everyone will be happy.
So there's certainly a lot to think about in what we've talked about this morning, but some of the things that have really resonated with me, some of the things that the panel have shared this morning is firstly, understand the data. Have everyone in the team really focusing on the same metrics. To take what Craig said a second ago, kind of what gets measured, gets done, and gets achieved. But it's more than just each individual contributor's technical skill. It's about recognizing that it takes the full breadth of the team to be able to come together and actually sharing those skills. Recognizing that each person in the team has a reason to be at the table and has a specialist skill and has the ability to share that skill with the rest of the team, and having the team collaborate through sharing skills and sharing knowledge, and certainly not to underestimate the power of collaboration and communication, particularly within the functions where perhaps communication isn't a core skill. We talked, not to stereotype, but we talked about a certain function where they may be a little bit quieter, more analytical, more thinker type personality, but being able to recognize that each skill has a contribution and to be able to hear from everybody and pulling together the commercial strategy for the hotel. So I'd like to wrap up by saying a huge thank you to my panel this morning. Thank you very much for joining us.